Good evening once again. Maybe you've been wondering as we go through as I indicate the three qualities that I admire most about God, or that I think indicate most who God is. Tonight we get to number one. Last night we had compassion and mercy as number two. Before that we had justice as number three. What's the number one quality that identifies God for me? It's faithfulness. Our God is always faithful. God is always, always faithful. Lots of times, and I'm sure you understand this, when people struggle with their experience of God, especially if they face difficult or challenging circumstances in their lives, I suspect you have had those experiences. I know I have. There are times when it feels like God has abandoned me. God has left me and gone off to himself and left me to my own devices and my own circumstances of life. That's those times when people ask most purposefully, where's God in all this? Where's God? Well, I always like to point out when people ask me that, I think that's the wrong question to ask. I think the real question is this. See, if I believe that God is faithful, and for me, that's God's highest, most identifying quality. God is faithful. And so if I believe that God is faithful, when I face circumstances that stretch me or challenge me or trouble me or throw my life into a tizzy, somehow the question is not, where's God? The question is, how is God being faithful to me now? How is God being faithful to me now? I believe that God is always faithful, somehow. I always like to throw that word somehow in there. God is always, always faithful. So in circumstances when it doesn't feel like God is being faithful, the question is, how is God being faithful to me now? Let me tell you that many people have raised that very issue in these days of pandemic and economic upheaval and racial turmoil, saying, where is God in all this? Why doesn't God fix this? Why doesn't God make this better? Oh, God's here. God's here for sure because God is always faithful. But the job of fixing it is not God's. God is not a magician. Interestingly enough, God gave us free will and the gift of intellect and understanding so that we can understand the circumstances of our lives, and being open to God can come to find where does God want us to go with this? And it really is, what are you going to do about that? If you ever read the book of Job, it's a great book to read. It's a story about someone beset by awful troubles, had awful things happen to him, and then had to figure out, well, God, where are you? You sent me on this special pilgrimage, and it didn't work out for me, and look, everything's gone wrong. I tried to be faithful to you. I did all the right things. What did I ever do to deserve this, God? And the last chapter of the book of Job is really beautiful, as God says, look at this whole world around you. Where were you when I created this big and beautiful world, this complex world in which we live? Where were you? What he's trying to get across to Job is, trust me. Trust me. I know what I'm doing. I'm here. And if you stand by me, you're going to be able to move through these difficult circumstances. And so there's my number one quality about God. The thing that God is most like in my book. The God I believe in and the God that I believe Jesus reveals is a God who is always, always, always faithful to you and to me. Do you believe that? I sure hope so. And I wish you a good, restful evening, assured that God continues, even in your sleeping, to be faithful to you. Good night.